The ships appeared over Earth on a Tuesday morning. Not just one or two, but hundreds, vast silhouettes blotting out the sun in every major city. They were breathtaking in a way that silenced fear, at least for a while. Silver and blue, shaped like falling tears, motionless and soundless against the clouds. Dr. Sarah Chen was in her office at the Beijing Historical Institute when the broadcast began. Every screen on Earth flickered to the same image, a tall, graceful being whose skin shimmered between green and blue. Its eyes were wide and gentle, its voice clear in every language at once. "People of Earth," it said, "we are the Keelthar, emissaries of the Galactic Council. We have watched your species for some time. We come offering salvation." Sarah leaned forward, her coffee cooling untouched. The being's tone softened. "Your world teeters on the brink of ruin. Your climate fails. Your nations fight over dwindling resources. Your weapons could erase all life within hours. We have seen this before. Few worlds survive, but you can." The screens filled with images, floods, fires, clouds shaped like death, starving children. Sarah's stomach twisted. Every image was true. 50 years of chaos had broken humanity. Half the coasts drowned, 3 nuclear detonations scarred continents, billions dead. "We offer you protection," the Keelthar said. "Accept our guidance and we will save you from yourselves. We will teach peace. We will give you food, medicine, and knowledge. All we ask is your trust." The alternative, the being said almost kindly, was extinction, within 2 decades, perhaps sooner. There was no real debate. Within a week, every government signed the treaty. Sarah watched the broadcast of the signing, her heart hollow. Humanity's leaders stood small and humbled before beings of light, surrendering their future to them. 3 days later, the barrier went up, an invisible wall encasing the solar system. The Keelthar called it protection. They said it was for humanity's safety, a temporary measure while they learned. That was 15 years ago. Now Sarah stood by her apartment window, gazing into a familiar sky. The stars looked unchanged, but she knew better. They were prisoners, safe, well-fed, medicated, healed, but still trapped. The Keelthar had kept every promise: peace, prosperity, abundance. But the price was freedom. Science was restricted, weapons outlawed, even birth itself was governed. Each couple was allowed 1 child and no more, only with council approval. People had adjusted. Most were content. Sarah's own sister had told her just last month, "We're better off now. Remember how bad it was? At least no one's dying in wars anymore." But Sarah couldn't silence the unease gnawing at her. The Keelthar were kind, gentle, patient, but they decided everything. And whenever anyone asked when the temporary protection would end, the answer never changed: when you are ready. When you can be trusted. It had started a year ago, almost by accident. Sarah had been researching medieval Europe, studying accounts of the Black Death. In an old monk's journal, one passage caught her attention. The angels came when the plague was worst. They built a wall about our lands that none could cross. But the warriors rose, and the angels fell like burning stars. She'd dismissed it at first. Religious imagery, she thought. Medieval people saw every mystery as divine. But then she found another account. And another from China, Tibet, the Americas. All from the same century. All describing the same things. Beings from the sky, a barrier, and a war. She spent months in archives, both digital and physical. The Keelthar allowed full access to human history. Why not? It was harmless to them, just ancient myth. Yet fragments began to connect. A name appeared again and again: Vexrun. The word meant protectors in several early languages. They were described as tall, with shimmering skin, just like the Keelthar. Then last week, Sarah gained access to a restricted Vatican file through a trusted friend. Inside was a letter from 1350, 3 years after the plague began. "The visitors have gone," it read. "Not one remains. Our scholars say we drove them away with our new weapons, our new knowledge. They came to cage us as beasts and learned too late what we become when cornered. May God forgive us for what we did and for what we learned." Sarah's hands had trembled as she read. The letter spoke of weapons impossible for the era, devices that could strike down ships, poisons that targeted only the Vex Run, knowledge derived from captured alien tools. Somehow humanity had fought back. Now she sat at her desk, heart pounding. If it was true, if humans had done this before, then the Keelthar didn't know. They'd never mentioned the Vex Run, never shown fear of mankind. Her computer chimed. A message appeared from an unknown sender. Dr. Chen, we know what you found. Project Lazarus is active. Location attached. Come alone. We've been waiting. The Keelthar think we've forgotten. They're wrong. Sarah's breath caught. Project Lazarus. She'd never heard the name, but she knew it was real. Outside, a patrol ship drifted past, blue, serene, deadly. She closed her laptop and stood. It was time to remember. The address led to an abandoned subway beneath old Beijing. Officially condemned, sealed off for safety. Behind a false wall marked with radiation warnings, she found the hidden stairwell. It went far deeper than any subway. 500 steps down, she reached a dim corridor lined with blue lights. Dr. Chen. A man emerged from the shadows, tall, gray-haired, wearing a military uniform. General Marcus Webb, he introduced. Thank you for coming. What is this place? Sarah asked. Insurance, Webb said simply. Come, there's a lot to see. He led her through doors requiring multiple security codes. At the end lay a vast chamber, alive with screens, consoles, tactical maps, an underground command center. Project Lazarus, Webb said. Operational since 2157, the day the Keelthar arrived. Sarah's mind reeled. That's impossible. They dismantled our militaries. Disarmed everything, Webb smiled faintly. They dismantled what we showed them. He turned toward a massive holographic display. Dr. Chen, what do you remember about the resource wars before first contact? Everyone knows, Sarah said. The nations fought over oil, water, minerals. Millions died. That's why the Keelthar said we needed saving. That's what we let them believe, Webb said quietly. Even them. The truth is different. We were building underground, underwater, in places satellites couldn't see. When we detected their ships decades before they revealed themselves, we faced a choice, fight and perish, or become what they expected. Webb tapped a console, revealing images, vast caverns filled with machinery, underwater shipyards, mines turned into weapons labs. We chose to look weak, he said. We made it believable. The wars, the pollution, the chaos, all a performance. When the Keelthar arrived offering salvation, we welcomed them with open arms. And while they congratulated themselves for saving us, we built deeper. Sarah's head swam. Why tell me this now? Because of what you found, Webb replied. The Vex Run. We've known about them far longer than you. He led her through another security door. The room beyond was nothing like the command center. It looked like a museum. Display cases stretched along the walls, each containing relics that defied logic. Crystal tools humming faintly, dark metallic armor, weapons grown rather than forged. Recovered artifacts, Webb said. After the Keelthar sealed the system, we started digging, beneath ruins, mountains, temples. We found traces of them everywhere. The Vex Run! Sarah walked among the exhibits in stunned silence. One case held what resembled a rifle, carved from a single seamless piece of black alloy. Another displayed fragments of a hull with patterns that shifted like liquid under the light. Webb's voice was calm, matter of fact. The medieval accounts were true. The Vex Run came during the Black Death. They saw a dying species and thought they could control it. They built their barrier, dictated our future, just as the Keelthar do now. What happened to them? Sarah whispered, though she already knew. Humans killed them, Webb said simply. All of them. It took 3 years. Sarah stared, unable to speak. They didn't have computers or satellites, Webb continued. But they had something the Vex Run didn't understand, the will to be free and the genius to adapt. They learned faster than their captors believed possible. He handed her a tablet filled with scanned manuscripts. Diagrams, formulas, journal entries. They studied the Vex Run, dissected them, recreated their tools. They even turned the plague itself into a weapon, altered it to target Vex Run biology. By 1350, the invaders were extinct. The barrier collapsed, and humanity buried the truth. Sarah's voice trembled. But why? Why hide it? Webb looked at her, eyes hard. Would you want to remember? Would you want your children to know what your species is capable of when cornered? He gestured to the relics around them. Some cultures kept fragments of the memory, myths of dragons, demons, fallen angels, stories meant to warn us and them. The sky. But over generations, the truth faded. It became legend, then myth. Webb's expression hardened. But some of us kept the records, hidden, protected. When the Keelthar arrived, a few within the world's remaining governments recognized the pattern instantly. We'd seen this before. We knew exactly what would follow. Sarah's thoughts spiraled. The Keelthar don't know, do they? About the Vex run? About what really happened? No, Webb said. To them, the Vex run are just another extinct race that vanished mysteriously. They never suspected humanity's role. Why would they? In 1347, we couldn't even reach orbit. We had swords, not spaceships. He tapped a control, and new images filled the air. Schematics, blueprints, simulations. For 15 years, we've been studying the Keelthar, their ships, their systems, their biology. Every supply run they send, we tag with nanoprobes. Every time they scan us, we scan them. They think we're harmless. They think they broke us. But you're not, Sarah said softly. Webb's voice was calm, resolute. We're human. We don't stay in cages, not ones we build, and not ones forced on us by self-proclaimed saviors. He turned to a nearby console, and the display shifted again, showing weapons, fleets, and diagrams of hidden installations. We've built more than they can imagine. Quantum disruptors reverse-engineered from Vex-run relics, genetic targeting plagues calibrated for Keelthar DNA, lunar railguns, deep-sea hangars, armadas cloaked beneath the oceans. In 72 hours, we'll bring down their barrier and remind them what happens when you try to protect humanity from itself. Sarah stared at the displays, the intricate death machines, the precision, the resolve. Horror and awe warred inside her. The Keelthar had brought peace, food, safety, but also chains. "What do you need from me?" she asked quietly. Webb's expression softened into something almost proud. "Your research. The full history of the Vex-run war. Humanity must remember who we are and what we've already survived." Sarah thought of her sister, content under alien rule, of billions living in comfort, never knowing freedom, of children raised to obey instead of question. "If you do this," she said, "people will die. The Keelthar will fight back." "Yes," Webb replied, "but they'll die free, and humanity will endure. We always do." Sarah looked again at the Vex-run artifacts, 7 centuries old, yet still humming faintly with power. Proof of humanity's defiance. Proof that even gods could bleed. She took a breath. "I'll help you." Webb nodded once. "Welcome to Project Lazarus, Dr. Chen. Let's remind the galaxy what humans are truly capable of." High above Earth, a Keelthar administrator named Zephyriel reviewed his daily compliance reports. Human cooperation, 99.8%. Violence, minimal. Population controls, effective. Everything was perfect. In another 20, perhaps 30 years, humanity would finally be ready to join the Galactic Council as junior members. Zephyriel felt quietly satisfied. This was the Council's mission, guiding young civilizations, saving them from their own self-destruction. It was noble work, he thought, necessary work. He never noticed the microscopic machines weaving through his ship's circuits. Never. Sensed the faint distortions rippling across the barrier surrounding the solar system. He didn't know that, beneath the calm surface of the world he watched over, humanity was sharpening its teeth. The countdown had already begun. In 72 hours, everything would change. The warnings had been there all along, buried in human history. The Keelthar had simply never looked. Sarah spent those 3 days buried deep within Project Lazarus, sleeping barely at all. There was too much to absorb, too much to comprehend. The scale of it was staggering. Webb led her into a cavernous hangar carved into solid stone 2 miles underground. The air smelled faintly of ozone and oil. It was enormous, large enough to hold 10 football fields, and filled with sleek, predatory vessels unlike anything she'd ever seen. Human ships, forged from stolen Keelthar technology and ancient Vex-run design. "We have installations like this across the globe," Webb explained. "Beneath oceans, buried in ice, hidden in abandoned mines. The Keelthar's orbital scans only ever looked at the surface. They never thought to dig deeper." A young engineer hurried over, saluting crisply. "General, barrier analysis is complete. Dr. Yamamoto's team confirmed the weak points. We can bring it down." Webb nodded. "And inversion?" "Yes, sir. Once we trigger collapse, we can reverse the field. It'll contain them instead of us." Sarah's stomach turned cold. "You're going to trap them here." "For a while," Webb replied evenly. "Long enough to make them understand." They moved next to a biological lab sealed behind transparent barriers. Scientists in clean suits worked with eerie precision. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, head of the division, approached with a calm, clinical demeanor. "The Keelthar's physiology is almost identical to the Vex-run," she said, displaying holographic models of alien DNA. "Different species, yes, but compatible enough. The genetic weapons we've developed, based on the old medieval plagues, will affect them too." "Will they be lethal?" Sarah asked. Okonkwo's tone didn't change. "If we choose. We've engineered variants. Some incapacitate, some kill slowly, others instantly. The deployment will depend on how they respond." Sarah felt sick. This wasn't theory. This was preparation for genocide against a species that had saved them. Webb caught her expression. "Dr. Chen," he said quietly, "come with me." He led her to a small, dimly lit office and pulled up a different set of files. Psychological analyses, population reports. The data was stark. Under Keelthar rule, global suicide rates had tripled. Depression was endemic. Humanity had abundance and safety, but no purpose. "We're not built for cages," Webb said softly, "even comfortable ones. The Keelthar mean well, but they measure success by how many of us live, not by how many of us want to." He showed her more data, creativity down 50%, innovation stagnating, art repetitive, music formulaic. "They aren't evil," he said, "but they're killing what makes us human, slowly. They've turned us into pets, fed, safe, obedient." Sarah looked down, realizing how often her own work had been stalled by alien oversight, how every request had to pass approval, how she'd stopped asking real questions because she already knew the answer. Not yet, or worse, never. They were dismantling the Keelar warships, methodically, surgically, like a predator dissecting prey to understand it better. On the surface, the world roared. The night sky over Earth lit with streaks of tungsten fire and blue quantum flashes. Keelthar vessels tried to rise, only to be swatted back down by lunar guns and atmospheric drones that shimmered into existence from invisible stealth shells. Sarah watched the feeds in stunned silence. "My God, we're actually doing it!" Webb's voice was calm. "Not doing it, Doctor. Finishing it." The human networks were chaos, some cheering, others praying, others screaming. For the first time in centuries, the word war was on every tongue. But it was not despair, it was remembrance. In orbit, Zephyriel realized communication with the Council was gone. The barrier, once humanity's cage, was now sealing them inside a killing ground. He tried to issue a full evacuation order, but half his fleet had already gone silent. The others were being boarded. "Boarded? By who?" he demanded. On his screen appeared live footage. Human ships, small, fast, angular, piercing through Calathar hulls and flooding corridors with swarms of soldiers in adaptive armor. They weren't the terrified primitives he remembered from first contact. They moved like ghosts, efficient, fearless, merciless. "Transmit surrender," he gasped. "We meant to help them," his communications officer whispered. "They're not listening, sir. They've jammed every frequency." In Project Lazarus Command, Webb's team watched the orbital readouts collapse into static. Sarah gripped the console. "We could end them all. Every Calathar on or near Earth." Webb nodded slowly. "Or we could let them remember." He hesitated for a long moment, then turned to her. "The Vex Run didn't listen. They thought they knew what was best for us. This is what happens when you try to chain a species born in chaos." He keyed the final command. Across the fleet, the human ships ceased fire simultaneously. The surviving Calathar vessels drifted crippled but intact, surrounded by a planet bristling with weapons. Sarah exhaled, trembling. "Is it over?" Webb shook his head. "No, Doctor. It's just the beginning. Because now, beyond the barrier, the rest of the galaxy would be watching, and they would see what the Calathar had seen too late. That humanity had not evolved past war. It had perfected patience. The Council," Webb said, handing the chip to Zephyriel. "No edits. No omissions. Let them see who we really are." Zephyriel stared at it, the small sliver of metal and data that now weighed like a star in his hand. "If I give them this," he said quietly, "they'll panic. They'll see you as a threat beyond containment." Webb nodded. "Good. Fear breeds caution." "Maybe that's the only language your council understands." Sarah frowned. "Or maybe it'll start a war." Webb glanced at her. "Then it'll be the first war we fight on equal ground." Zephyriel looked out the viewport where human and Kalar ships floated side by side in uneasy silence. He could see the human insignia now burned into the side of his repaired cruiser, an open hand gripping a burning torch. "Project Lazarus, a symbol of rebirth through fire." He sighed. "Do you know what the Council will call you after this?" Sarah folded her arms. "What?" "The species that refuses correction." He looked almost wistful. "You could have joined us as children of the stars. Instead, you've chosen to stand alone." Webb smiled faintly. "We've been alone since we first looked up at the night sky and realized no one was coming to save us." Silence hung in the observation deck. The hum of alien engines filled the air as the Kalar ships aligned for departure. Webb gave a small nod to the technicians below. "Open the barrier," he ordered. The great sphere that had once caged humanity shimmered in the void, then rippled outward, its energy reversing, expanding into a vast, translucent shield that now faced away from Earth. A defense, not a prison. The stars beyond glimmered like they had been reborn. Zephyriel watched in awe. "It's beautiful." "It's freedom," Sarah said softly. He turned to her. "And what will you do now, Dr. Chen? Now that you have it?" She smiled faintly, though her eyes were tired. "We'll argue. We'll rebuild. We'll probably fight each other again. It's what we do. But this time, we'll do it on our terms." Webb clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze locked on the horizon of stars. "Tell your council something for me, Zephyriel. Tell them humanity isn't a disease to cure or a child to protect. We're the fire that reshapes everything it touches. Try to smother it, and it only burns hotter." Zephyriel nodded slowly. "I'll tell them." "But they won't believe it, not until they see it for themselves." "They will," Webb said. Sooner or later. Moments later, the Kalar fleet ignited its engines. One by one, the ships slipped through the newly reformed barrier, leaving behind the world they had once ruled and the species they had tried to contain. Sarah watched until the last glimmer vanished into the black. The earth below turned slowly, whole and free for the first time in decades. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked quietly. Webb's voice was steady, almost reverent. "Of course they will. And when they do, they'll find a different humanity waiting for them." "Stronger?" she asked. He nodded. and wide awake. Far beyond, as the Keelar fleet jumped toward deep space, Zephyriel looked at the data chip in his hand one last time. In its reflection, he saw a pale blue world shining beneath its new shield. He whispered, "They survived extinction by becoming it." And with that, the stars swallowed the fleet, leaving humanity alone once more, free, defiant, and very much alive them, Webb said to Zephyriel, his voice calm but edged with iron. "Let them see what we truly are. Let them decide, enemy or ally. They'll choose destruction," Zephyriel warned. "After seeing this, they'll name you an existential threat." "Maybe," Webb said, unflinching. "Or maybe they'll finally understand that trying to destroy us creates the threat." "We don't start wars," Sarah added sharply, "but we damn sure finish them. Tell them about the Vex run. Make it clear. When you try to protect us from ourselves, we protect ourselves from you." Zephyriel took the data chip with trembling hands. "I'll tell them," he said quietly. "But I can't promise they'll listen." "Then you'd better be convincing," Webb replied. "Because if they come back with war fleets, there won't be mercy a second time. We let you live because you didn't know better. They won't have that excuse." When the time came for the Keelar to leave, Sarah and Webb stood in the command center, watching the alien ships drift toward the barrier, the new barrier. This one faced outward, no longer a cage but a shield. The ships passed through it unharmed, their engines flaring before vanishing into faster-than-light space, carrying humanity's message back to the Council. "What do you think they'll do?" Sarah asked. Webb sighed. "Argue for months. Then they'll send scouts, fast ships that can run if things go bad. They'll watch from the dark for years and then decide whether we're worth engaging or too dangerous to ignore." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "And us? What do we do until then?" "We build," Webb said, pulling up the star charts. "We plan. We prepare for real contact with the rest of the galaxy, as equals this time. Over the next months, humanity transformed. Project Lazarus was no longer a secret. Everyone knew now about the buried weapons, about the war with the Kalathar. Pride, shame, confusion, it didn't matter. The truth was out. And for the first time, everyone understood one thing. Humanity was not alone anymore and never would be again. Sarah returned to her work, but it felt different. She wasn't studying history anymore. She was writing it. Universities formed new departments: xenobiology, alien sociology, interstellar law. Earth was preparing for its future among the stars. Webb's people operated openly. Hidden facilities became public. The once shadowed soldiers were hailed as heroes or condemned as monsters. Debates raged. Had humanity done the right thing? When students asked Sarah, were we wrong to fight back? Would we have been better off under Kaiar rule? Are we the monsters? She always answered the same way. We're human, complicated, capable of terrible things and wonderful things, often at the same time. The Keelar weren't wrong to fear us, but they were wrong to think they could control us. Years passed. The scouts came just as Webb predicted, small, swift ships lurking at the solar rim. Human vessels approached them, not with weapons, but with words. Short transmissions, careful exchanges, but they were conversations between equals. Humanity slowly, cautiously took its place in the galactic order. Not as primitives, not as protégés, but as survivors who had earned their place through blood, brilliance, and will. Then one day, Sarah received a transmission from Zephyriel. He'd been reinstated by the Council, assigned to study human history of all things. His message was brief but heavy. The Council debated your fate for 6 months. Some wanted to send fleets. Others wanted to quarantine your system. In the end, they made a new classification for Earth, dangerous ally. They're afraid of you, but they're more afraid of what you'd become if they tried to destroy you. Your message got through. They chose ally, barely. Don't make them regret it. Sarah showed it to Webb. We did it, she said softly. For now, Webb replied. They're leaving us alone, but this is only the beginning. There are thousands of species out there. The Keelar were just the first. Some will be friends, others won't. We need to be ready for all of them. Will we ever be safe? Sarah asked. Webb smiled grimly. We're human. We're never safe. We just survive anyway. 3 years later, humanity's first true starship launched. Remembrance. A vessel of scientists, diplomats, soldiers, and explorers. Its mission, to meet the galaxy on humanity's terms. Sarah stood aboard as it pierced the new barrier. Beside her were Webb and Zephyriel serving as liaison. She looked back one last time at Earth, small and blue, no longer caged. "What do you think we'll find out there?" she asked. "Everything," Webb said. "Friends, enemies, wonders, horrors, the usual." "You think we're ready?" Webb laughed. "No, but that's never stopped us before." Zephyriel shifted awkwardly in his seat. "I still don't understand how your species survived." "You should have destroyed yourselves long ago." Sarah smiled faintly. "Everyone thinks that." "You did. The Vexron did. But here we are, alive, learning, still dangerous." Zephyriel nodded. "Still dangerous. But only to those who try to cage you." As Remembrance sped into the dark, it carried more than crew and cargo. It carried a legacy, a message written in fire, memory, and defiance. We survived ourselves. We survived you. We'll survive whatever comes next. And as humanity reached for the stars, the galaxy finally understood the truth, whispered through every human myth and history. Dragons can be slain. Monsters can fall. Cages can break.